Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. We are here today for another session of Gnostic Conversations with our friend Scott Billings from Glasgow, Scotland. And he will be joining us in just a moment on Instagram as well. So Scott, when you're ready, just go to the Instagram. I'm already live there, and you can just you can join us.
Yeah, I've pressed the go live button on the Instagram. As it come through?
No, so you want to get out of your life and you want to go into my live feed.
Okay.
So you want to click on end at the top there on your right. And now go to your home screen.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you'll see NYC Gnosis that has gone live.
Yeah.
Perfect. There you are. Okay, so now I'm going to invite you in. Just accept and you'll be there. All right, there you are.
Great.
Welcome, everyone. This is my good friend Scott joining us from Glasgow, Scotland. And we're going to talk today about the chakra system, the endocrine system, and the nervous system. So the purpose of this conversation is to help us all have an idea of how the chakra system works in relation to our physical body, and how the chakra system, which, as you know, is a connection. It's a connection. It's a system that connects our spiritual nature, our consciousness, our essence, or our soul with the physical body, and it's related to the overall health of the physical body. And this just fits right in with the conversations that we've been having about our health and how to improve our health, and how to align our physical bodies and our mind with a proper state of being that allows us to connect with our essence and with our higher nature. And so, looking forward to this conversation, and for Scott to share his insights into this. I just want to begin with this thought by Samael Aun Weor. He says, the human body is a perfect machine built in the workshop of nature by the cosmic consciousness. The innermost, that is our higher self, wrapped in his astral body with his chakras, controlled by means of the sympathetic nervous system, the whole organism, and all the hormonal secretions. And so there's a lot to unwrap here. But let's get right into it. Scott, let me open the mic to you. Thank you again for joining us, and we're very excited and happy to see you here.
Yeah, thanks, Christian, and good to be here, and good to have a chance to listen to some of the conversations that you've had the past few weeks. And so I think this fits in well with the thread of what you guys have been talking about. I started looking into sort of energy systems when I started martial arts, which was sort of in the early mid-80s.
Sure.
And sort of got into it more from the Chinese perspective, looking at Taoism and Qigong. And then I started studying acupuncture in the mid-90s, and there was quite a differentiation in acupuncture because it's based in Chinese medicine and the meridian system, which is founded on sort of a deep understanding of how the body works, but from a different perspective than the Indian, chakra and yogic system.
Right.
And so when I was studying at uni, there was quite a differentiation between those two systems, one of Taoism and one of yoga. And then when I started Gnosis, say in 2000, I really started to see the importance of the yogic system and the chakras. And it offers a really deep understanding of how the body works on the one hand, because I'd studied acupuncture and worked in relation to health, but also to really see that continuum of from the physical body through the vital body into our psychology, the connecting to our consciousness, and then in relation to the being. And it provides a really beautiful way to understand that. And so the chakras then become a means of connecting to that system and understanding how that process of reception, assimilation, and transmission of energy between our consciousness, our psychology, and the vital and physical bodies works. And it's a two-way street, that what happens to our physical body can affect our psychology, and what happens to the psychology can affect the physical body. And so, it's a really complex system, but we can go through some of the basic elements of it that we study in Gnosis to really help us orient us to make better use of our spiritual practice, to have physical and psychological health, but also then as a means of liberating our consciousness, which is really what we want to do in Gnosis.
Right. Yeah. And that's something great that you just mentioned there, and that I always started realizing, and that I like to emphasize to my students, is that not only does our we can influence both of our natures, our physical and our spiritual nature, from what we can call the bottom down approach, or the bottom up approach, or top to bottom, right? And so you can affect your physical body, and therefore the hormonal secretions, the nervous system, from just your thoughts alone. Or vice versa, right? You can also, and as we were just doing a meditation, as you begin to relax the body, right, the nervous system begins to calm down, and then the endocrine system begins to secrete certain hormones related to growth, related to digestion and all that. And so, I think it's one thing that not many people are aware, that you can trigger both, right? And so what we want to do is use both, right, to our advantage.
Yeah. And to really see that the foundation of that is that the chakras function dependent upon states of consciousness that will affect then our psychology and then our physiology. So we can have more time to talk about the sort of the interesting stuff of working with our consciousness and how we can then integrate that with the physical body. Though it's good to have a bit of a background, particularly from a Gnostic perspective. And so, depending upon the degree of understanding, we can we'll just go through a bit of background information to look at how the chakras come to be and the function that they play as that intermediary between the consciousness, the mind, and then the physical or vital and physical bodies. So, within the absolute, we see that the primordial elements, the masculine and feminine forces, are united and in profound equilibrium. And then, as creation starts to emerge and unfold, that masculine and feminine principle begin to divide. And so in there we have, there's many different terms for this masculine and feminine principle, but within the Hindu context, it's called the Purusha and the Prakriti. So the Purusha is the spiritual element that for us, as we know, unfolds through Kether into Atman and the being and so on. And then the Prakriti, or the Mula Prakriti, as it's called within the absolute, and then unfolding into creation becomes the Prakriti, is the Divine Mother, that feminine principle. And so in Gnosis, we just study the 5 main aspects of the Divine Mother. But these 2 elements both unfold. So again, as we study in Gnosis through the 7 dimensions, and particularly then through the Tree of Life, we see the unfoldment of the different parts of the being according to the Sephiroth of the Tree of Life. So we have the Trinity, so Kether, Chokmah, Binah, so the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then from that emerges Atman, or the being, or the intimate. And the being then sends his essence, the spark of consciousness within the human soul, into creation. And so while this is occurring, the unfoldment of the being in creation itself is similarly unfolding and emerging from the absolute. So from the primordial prana, or from the mula prakriti, and then the prana, the akash, the ether, and then the tattvas. And so we see a gradual unfoldment of that primordial energy into matter that's molded by the intelligence of the Divine Mother to create vehicles through into which the consciousness can manifest. And so at every level and dimension of existence, from the physical, vital, astral, mental, causal, buddhic, and atmic, there's a suitable vehicle, a material and energetic vehicle that enables the consciousness to manifest. And so at the fundamental level, we see that these two are never really separated, that the Purusha and the Prakriti are always connected. And the consciousness is always, as it's described, mounted upon the prana.
Right.
And so the analogy that's given is that the consciousness is light that enables perception and comprehension, and it comes into existence in order to know itself. But it sees, but can't move. So it has consciousness. It can know, but it can't move and act in the world. And the prana is the substrate, the energetic and material form that gives legs and movement to the consciousness. So the analogy that's given is like a lame, like someone that can't move, person that's sitting on a horse. And so the person on the horse can see and perceive and direct where the horse has to go. And the horse has that force and that power to take the consciousness wherever it needs to go. And so we see then that a physical body is formed through the process of creation. And we don't need to go into that today about the four kingdoms and the whole process of unfoldment and of evolution. But within a human being that's produced, we see then this gradual, beautiful process of the elaboration of a physical body. So within the sexual act, again, the man and the woman unite, and we get 23 chromosomes from the male and 23 chromosomes from the female in the sperm and the ova, and they unite along with 2 chromosomes that exist in the etheric or the vital dimension, and that forms a single cell. And that single cell then splits and becomes 2, and those 2 split and become 4, and those 4 split and become 8. And gradually it differentiates to become the whole physical body. So at the moment of conception, the masculine and feminine aspects of the parents unite, and the consciousness unites with that created cell that then differentiates to become the physical body. And all of that is governed by that intelligence of the Prakriti, the Divine Mother, and exists in the creation of the physical body, and principally then in the nervous system, which we mostly access through the instinctive center and the motor center at that primordial level. So there's an incredible intelligence that then links the physical body and its growth and development and maturation to the external world. And so that then is mediated through the ingestion of certain foods, so food, air, water, and impressions that are taken into the body. And then the intelligence of the instinctive center, mediated through the nervous system and the endocrine system, supports, heals, repairs, grows, and matures the physical body, all for the purpose of enabling the consciousness to experience existence and come to know itself.
That's a wonderful explanation.
Yeah. So, you know, we can study so many elements of that in terms of, you know, obviously the sexual act and conception, the development of the fetus, the whole sort of endocrine process of maturation of an infant through to adulthood, and you know, in relation to the 7 planets of Mercury. So there's in Gnosis we cover all of these elements to be able to study. But for what we want to look at today, we can just take it that we're a human being and we have within us all of this incredible wisdom of the Divine Mother and that consciousness, which is that spark of the being that exists inside of us. And so in creation then we have, if we recall the elements of the tree of life, the unfoldment of the being, within us we have an atom of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so the Father governs the positive forces of creation. the Son, the negative forces of creation, and the Holy Spirit, the reconciling, or the forces that reconcile the positive and negative. And so these relate to, the Father relates to the central nervous system, and the central nervous system is the brain and the spine. And the central nervous system is quite complex. I'll go into it in a moment. And then the Son governs the sympathetic nervous system, and the Holy Spirit the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic and parasympathetic are two aspects of what's called the peripheral nervous system that works in conjunction with the central nervous system. So we see then that these three elements, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, relate to the three principal aspects of the nervous system. And the law of three always controls the process of creation and existence. And then the law of seven orders that process of creation. So when we have the three, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit related to those aspects of the nervous system, we also have an atom of each of those elements related to particular endocrine glands. So at the magnetic field of the root of the nose, which connects to the hypothalamus, and then from that through to the pineal and the pituitary gland, we find an atom of the Father. And then in the pituitary gland itself is an atom of the cosmic Christ. And then in the pineal gland is an atom of the Holy Spirit. And so these three represent that crown, the logoic crown, that intersects the endocrine and the nervous system. So these three elements, the atoms of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit, relate to the endocrine glands and the nervous system. And so the intelligence of the logoic crown governs those fundamental aspects of the nervous system and endocrine system that control the whole physiology of the body and connect it to the external world.
Right, that's it's just very interesting because in relation to the pineal gland, as you mentioned, right? There's a wonderful book, by the way, for all of you that are listening, by Samael Aun Weor. He wrote a book called titled Fundamental Notions of Endocrinology and Criminology, and there he talks in depth into the endocrine system and specific hormones, right? That all of these glands secrete. And when he talks about the pineal gland, he just to connect this a little bit with some of the lectures that we've been giving in relation to, for example, the important aspect in Gnosticism, which is sexuality, right? Transcendental sexuality. And he says that our pineal gland actually, he says that the Orientals, sages say that the sexual potency depends on the potency of the pineal gland, right? And so, and it's important, this is important because as you know, even Sigmund Freud has said that the source of all of our impulses and what drives us is the libido, right? Which is the sexual energy. And so the stronger or more potent and healthy pineal gland that we have, right? The healthier that our sexual energy and the more powerful that our sexual energy is, therefore the more energy in general that we have to move around, to do the things that we need to do in life, and to be creative and all of that, right? And that also links to the pituitary gland, which is related to imagination, clairvoyance, and all of these aspects. So yeah, I just want to throw that out there. I think it's again an important aspect. It goes to what you're saying.
Yeah, so each of those atoms, as they're described, which are just points of light, are located in the logoic crown, but then affect or govern different parts of the body. So the magnetic field at the root of the nose, which is related to the Father, governs the crown, the head, and then in the pituitary gland, the cosmic Christ, then from there governs the heart. There's an atom of the Christ in the heart as the nose atom, and then the pineal gland, as you were talking about, has a fundamental aspect in relation to the sexual energy, because it's governed by the Holy Spirit, which is that the spouse of the Divine Mother, the Kundalini, so Shiva and Shakti, and the center of gravity of the pineal of the Holy Spirit is Yesod in the sexual organs.
Right.
So we see this intimate relationship between the pineal gland and the sexual organs and Yesod. So we see this beautiful picture emerging of the relationship between the nervous system and the endocrine gland, and the three primary forces in the we can say the brain, but in the top aspects of the being. From there govern then the different levels. So from the crown, the heart, and then the sex. And through that governs the nervous system, the glands, the organs, the functions of the body, all governed from this superior element in the body. And so this then connects this macrocosmic level, so the function within a human being, with the microcosmic level inside a human being, with the macro outside of it. And so just as the Divine Mother produces the physical body and governs it with that intelligence, it also connects us to the natural and the cosmic aspect outside of us. And it's the chakras that are the intermediary between the internal and external aspects of the body. That the chakras have that intelligence that governs what takes place within the body, but it also connects us to the external world. And it connects us to all of the natural rhythms. So we see as the earth spins on its axis and we get the experience of night and day, we see that affects the production of melatonin. And melatonin is the principal hormone that's secreted by the pineal gland and regulates sleep function and all of these types of things. But so we have the earth spinning on its axis, we have the moon spinning in orbit around the earth, we have the earth orbiting around the sun on its axis, which gives us the 4 seasons, all of the energies within the solar system. And it's the chakras that act as the intermediary, the transference system between us as an individual and that greater cosmic reality. So it's through the chakras that we receive and then transform the prana, the akash, the ether, and the tattvas. And each of those elements, the 4 tattvas, the ether or the akash, and then the higher elements of the consciousness, relate to particular chakras. And so each chakra absorbs and then assimilates and transmits the energetic level that it resonates with. So as we'll look at in some way, for instance, the Muladhara chakra at the base of the spine is related to the tattva Prithvi, which is the tattva of the element of the earth. Right. So everything to do with terrestrial functioning, our atmosphere, the earth itself, our physical bones, the foods that we eat that have that tattvic, that Prithvic element, relate to that chakra. And then if we look at apas, which is the tattva of water, the same thing. Everything that we receive from the constellations, from the galaxy, from the solar system, from other planets, from within our atmosphere, from within our immediate environment, all of that then affects that particular chakra related to that at that resonant level of apas. And so too, from earth to water to fire to air, up through the chakras, and then to the ether and the akash. And so we see then this beautiful interconnection, which I've really been reflecting on recently in relation to, what we're living in terms of the quarantine, and the impact that's having on the planet, and the cleansing of the various tattvic currents that are moving through the planet. Right, and so the question is whether or not, as a humanity, we can go along with that process of purification that's taking place, that's imposed on us at the moment. Hopefully so. I'm always a bit of an optimist.
Yeah, I think, sorry, it's just, that's again, one of the things that we were just, talking with students. It's like, can we go back to life being normal again? But, reflecting, actually, what is normal is, we're not living a normal life under these circumstances. So it's great that we actually go back to actually what really is normal, which is what this is sort of pushing us to. Yeah. And, it's something I want to also, remind everyone is that as above, so below, as within, so without, right? And so in the same way that we are a microcosm, and the planet is a macrocosm. And so the same way we have our inner constitution, we have those chakras within ourselves, but the planet also has these chakras. And our activity affects, right, the quality of the nourishment that the earth takes in as well, right? And so, as Master Samael explains, that we're like little machines that transform energies, right, that come from the cosmos, and then that energy that comes through us, we channel, and we, depending on what's in our mind and our emotions, we release that energy. And obviously, our thoughts and our emotions, you can say, color or distort that energy, and then we release it out into the earth. And so then we're not only polluting the earth, right, with just our external behavior and the chemicals that we're putting out on the world, but we're also, as an invitation to reflect, that we're also polluting the air, or nourishing the earth, sorry, with our thoughts and our emotions. And so if we have positive, loving emotions within us present at all times, right, we're nourishing the earth and everyone around with those, with those, I'm going to say, quote unquote, chemicals, which are emotions and thoughts. Or the opposite, if we're experiencing those negative emotions and negative thoughts. Right.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Which is why the scope of study and understanding of the chakras is so broad and so important. And there's some really good, I mean, they're sort of, we can call them spiritual in a way, but modern neuroscientific or physical examinations of the body. And there's a thing called the Heart Math Institute, and they've been studying the resonance that can take place in the body in relation to essentially the nervous system and the endocrine system. I don't know if they talk about the chakras, but it's curious that when we get an ECG, when we get our heart checked, they put all of these electrodes on our chest, and they check the electrical functioning of the heart on the outside of the body.
Yeah.
So the question then is, how far does that emanate from the body? Or if we get an EEG, the same thing. We have all of these electrodes on the outside of our head, and they're able to assess and evaluate all of the neural functioning of our brain on the outside of the skull.
Right.
So then again, the question would be, how far does that electromagnetic wave emanate from the brain and from the heart? And this is what the Heart Math Institute has started to look at, and what most religious, to some degree, and spiritual traditions of the past have indicated, that the circumference of a human being isn't limited to the surface of the skin, like the impact of a body. And so this introduces us to the wisdom of the chakras. And really, one of the fundamental questions that we have to ask ourselves when we enter Gnosis is, what is the nature and function and scope of the consciousness itself? Is the consciousness limited to this physical form, or can it experience and know beyond the limits of the physical body? And when we can answer that question, we've got some Gnosis under our belt.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
If we have a psychic experience, like a psychic faculty, or if we have a mystical state of, consciously leaving the physical body, and we know that we're outside of our body, we know the physical body is asleep, then we know that our consciousness can exist outside of the physical form.
Yeah, we were just talking about that actually last week. I gave a class on the powers of the power of the heart, and I talked about the Heart Math Institute and how they've been able to measure, right, something interesting actually, that they've not only been able to measure the electromagnetic field of the heart up to like 6 feet away from the body, but they say we say that we have, that our heart only that our heart has this electromagnetic field which extends 5 or 6 feet away from the body, but we can only say that because they say that their measuring tools only allow them to measure up to 6 or 5 feet away from the body. right?
Yeah.
But as we know from an esoteric point of view, this is the reason why sometimes when you think about someone and you're going to call them, you pick up the phone and they're already there in the phone, right? Why? Because that electromagnetic field has traveled and is already connected with all of our hearts, right? We're already connected, and it's an infinite electromagnetic field, and so that's something to ponder, right? And also some relation that you mentioned before, I want to go back to. And by the way, I've been receiving some questions and comments from you guys on Facebook. And so I just want to let you know that at the end of the talk, in about 10-15 minutes, we will get to your questions. And there will be a recording of this. I will post it on our YouTube channel and then on our Facebook page as well. All right. So we'll try to get to all of your questions. We appreciate you being here with us and your comments. Glad that you're enjoying this as much as we are. So something that you said earlier, Scott, in relation to the nose atom that Master Samael mentions, that we have this atom in our heart that is also related to that we can talk to, right? And that it's interesting because we've seen so many documentaries, right, about like self-healing and all these kinds of things, and people that have literally heal themselves, and I'm always careful when I say heal themselves, because I know that it's not themselves healing, it's them connecting to their higher essence, to what we call Atman, or the being that allows for that healing to take place. But opening ourselves to that and becoming conscious of that allows for the energies, these conscious energies, these intelligent principles to go through us and to heal us, right, as we heal ourselves, right? And that nose atom is, again, just an interesting example of how that connection, right, between us and the spiritual nature, and how we can consciously begin to influence how our system operates, and trigger healing. And obviously do the opposite of that. When we're in negative states, we just create unhealthy patterns within us that create disharmony in our system.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the capacity to positively or negatively influence all of that is within our hands. Not absolutely, but to a significant degree. And so, we can start by looking at that in terms of the how we nourish ourselves. And, we talk about the three foods. So there's physical food and water, air and impressions. And the most important is the food of impressions. But, food is also really important, because it's from food, the octave of food, that the sexual energy is made. And so as we take in these substances, each of the different types of foods that we eat has a particular quality and grade, and a predominance of a particular tattva. And so it has a resonance with a particular area of the body. So we can eat foods that are more dense, more heavy, and stimulate lower elements in the body, or we can eat foods that help out to raise our level of being in their quality and obviously quantity. And so, we take in these substances. So the food that goes into the stomach, we take in air that goes into the lungs, we take in impressions through the physical senses, and also the psychic senses, the chakras themselves. And then the intelligence of the Divine Mother extracts from those foods the subtler forces at lots of different levels that enables the body to function. So as we take in physical food, for instance, we take that in, and the intelligence mediated through the nervous system, autonomic nervous system, breaks that food down and extracts from that food, let's say an apple. We extract the vital and solar element from that food, and then the material element goes to repair and heal the physical body. The vital or the solar element then goes to the vital body, and that's digested and goes to repair and heal the centers of the human machine that enables those centers. So energy then is sent to the intellectual center, that's obviously purified and digested. that enables the intellect to think, which the intellectual center becomes that vehicle for the mind. And all of that is mediated through the chakras and its influence over the nervous and endocrine systems. And so, you know, we can look at, as I said, there's the three primary forces in relation to the nervous system, and we have broadly, we can say the central nervous system, which is the brain and spine, and then the parasympathetic, the peripheral nervous system, which is the sympathetic and parasympathetic. And these two, the brain and spine, as the central nervous system, then has cranial nerves and spinal nerves that connect with every aspect of the body. All of the organs, the muscles, the bones, everything in the body is connected through the nervous system. And to see then that every thought is an electrical impulse. Every emotion is an electrical impulse. You know, as you talked about with the heart math, all of that can be measured. Every heartbeat is an electrical impulse. And so depending upon the level and nature of our psychological state, it relates to particular lower or higher aspects of our being, and then influences certain types of the elements of certain chakras. Whether it's a heavy conditioned psychologically asleep state, or it's a transcendental psychological state, will determine which level of the chakra system we're predominantly functioning in and through. And it's said that most people live in the bottom two chakras. You know, living in the first and second state of consciousness, governed purely by the autonomic functioning of the physical body, and functioning purely to survive in the material world. And we can see then that as we elevate our level of being, we gain access to higher states of consciousness that's mediated through the chakras. And so we see then that the nervous system and the endocrine system work together with that through those higher centers in the brain, through the nervous system, we get that influence over particularly the pituitary and the pineal gland, and mediated through the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is really the control center of the endocrine system of the body. It's called like the master gland of the body, and affects the secretions of the hypothalamus affect then how the pituitary gland secretes all of its hormones that affect most of the major glands in the body. So I've got a list here of some of the things that the pituitary gland hormones affect physically and psychologically, and that's the basal body temperature, so our metabolism, along with hunger, thirst, fatigue, so energy levels in the body, the emotions, the whole gamut and array of emotions, growth and development of the body, electrolyte balance, sleep, weight, the circadian cycles, so the sleep-wake cycles, the sense of smell, stress levels and stress management because stress is the physical component of stress is very complex, but we can say it relates to one hormone in particular, which we can call cortisol. And that's the physical manifestation of the psychological experience of stress. That when we experience stress, the endocrine system floods the bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline and various other hormones that we then experience as that psychological state, and it can compound it. So as the endocrine gland secretes particular hormones into the bloodstream, that's like the postal service, that something gets sent out into the bloodstream and it's got a stamp on it, and that hormone will target particular cells in the body. So that could target the heart and make the heart to beat faster. It could target the lungs, and we start to breathe in a particular or characteristic way. Our adrenal glands will start to secrete adrenaline. Our pupils start to dilate. Our muscles start to tense up. Our pores start to open, all under the experience of stress, with the nervous system and the endocrine system responding to that psychological experience. So we see, we receive an impression, and then we interpret that according to the conditioning of the consciousness, the ego. So an impression arises through the senses. something arises from the subconscious that interprets that in a subjective and characteristic way, and we have a stress response. So then the nervous system responds to that and sends a message to the hypothalamus, which tells the pituitary gland to secrete certain things into the body that will then tell the blood to start, into the blood that will tell, as I said, the heart to beat faster, the pores to open, the pupils to dilate. And then we have a physical experience of stress. But that has a psychological cause related to conditioned consciousness.
Right.
So most of the interventions that we see, physical and energetic and psychological, start at the external level to try and control the body, which has a relative value.
Right.
So to really be able to transform that process, we have to work at the level of cause, which is the interpretation of the event. As we receive that impression, how can we transform our consciousness so we don't initiate a cascade of response in our body that we then experience as a psychological state of stress? And this is lots of other things through the hormonal system of the process of flight or fight, sexual activity, appetite. All of these types of things are regulated through the hormonal system. So the body is this incredibly complex biofeedback system where we're connected to the external world, that through the senses, the motor control of the body, the functioning of the internal organs, all of that is constantly in motion and activity, sending messages to and from the central nervous system and the brain as to what's happening with the body. So, we're just going into spring here in the Northern Hemisphere, and so the light and dark system changes. So our pineal gland starts to process more melatonin and regulates the sleep cycles. And the pineal gland, this is, we can see, if we understand that relationship between the pineal gland, the Holy Spirit, and the Yesod and the sexual organs and the sexual secretions, the energy, one of the principal ways at a physical level that we can influence in a positive way the pineal gland is to make sure that we get enough sunlight, direct sunlight into the eyes and on the skin, so that our body is able to synthesize vitamin D and then from that melatonin. And that we make sure we sleep in absolute darkness at nighttime, because if there's light on when we're sleeping, either through the curtain or that we've got on, then it affects the way that the pineal gland can regulate that sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah, and not to mention also limit our screen time, right? Which is something that we have to do right now. But it's something that I started doing a long time ago, along with trying to sleep completely in the dark. It really stimulates your pineal gland, and it helps you have even spiritual visions at night, because you create more DMT, and which is related to, right, they call the spirit molecule and all that, which can be secreted, or you can influence, right, your endocrine system to secrete that without the need of taking any substances. And that's also an important part of all of this, is to consciously begin to trigger these experiences on your own without the need of any external substances, which all in the end have some sort of side effect, right? Like everything that we take has some sort of side effect. But anyway, that's one thing, and the screen time is also important. It's the pineal gland, right? It's like light sensitive, so that's why if you notice, I've always mentioned this to students, like if you ever notice that around 3:30 in the morning, anywhere from 3 in the morning to 6 in the morning, you have your most vivid dreams, and that's because your pineal gland has been in darkness for at least 3 or 4 hours and has been as you were saying, it's inhibited by light, and so when it's in darkness, it becomes very, very active. And so then that's why sages, which is a wonderful practice to do, also to get up 3 in the morning, do a short meditation practice to connect with yourself, and then go back to sleep. And it's a way also to begin to trigger very lucid dreams and astral experiences. So I just wanted to jump in and mention. One thing also that for all of those of you that don't know is Scott and I spent 3 months together in Sydney in a sort of monk lifestyle for 3 months. We were roommates preparing ourselves to become Gnostic instructors, and every night we would go to bed at like 10:30. I think it was late, 10:30. At 10 we were by bed, and we would wake up every night at 2:30 in the morning. We did this for like 3 months straight. It was a wonderful experience. And between 3 and 6 in the morning, lots of us were having very, very interesting experiences, right, in our dreams and astral unfoldings and all that. And and so that's, again, just one way in which you can begin to have true direct spiritual experience, which is what we need, right? We need to, as Master Samael says, the time of theories and concepts has, we need to put aside, and we need to experience the truth by ourselves. And if we want to do that, we have to do things that will trigger, right, these that will open these chakras in a conscious way, so that we can begin to have these experiences with our being, and angels, extraterrestrials, aliens, whatever you call it, but most importantly, experiences with your own higher self, or your own, as they say, your own. When we say our being, for those of you that are new to Gnosis, we mean your guardian angel, your inner Atman, your inner Buddha, right? That inner master that you have within yourself. That's that source of guidance and of light in your life.
I'm not sure how much time we've got left, so perhaps let's have a look at, what did you want to do? Do you want to take some questions?
Let's take some questions. I have a couple of questions here. Let me just check on, I've just seen some comments on Instagram. Thank you all again for your support. In the photograph, I love the magic hour for that reason. Okay, let me see. I don't see any questions on Instagram. I do have some questions here on Facebook. There was one last one. Can you comment if what way the voice is a tool to work with the energy and the chakras? That's a great question. So you want to take that?
So in what way the voice can affect the energy and the chakras?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so what way we can use the voice as a tool to work with the energy and the chakras?
There's lots of ways to look at this. So we can see the voice is related to the Vishuddha chakra, and the quality of the voice is then a reflection of the quality of the energy overall of the body, but founded mostly on the virility of the sexual energy. But when we do the mantras, the most important thing we can see from that is that each mantra is a sound and a vibration. So to start to work with the chakras, as we start to understand the various levels at which they work, we can see that they'll have a physical effect, which will be a nervous and an endocrine effect, and then it will have an energetic and a psychological effect. So when we do the mantras, that sound of the mantra has the vibration and a meaning that will influence the body in a particular way. So as we initiate this process of interiorization, where the first step that we're doing is purification, that we're wanting to cleanse the nadis. And so this term nadi is like a channel through which the prana and the tattvas flow that connect the body, like the circulatory system of the body, but it's the subtle energy of the tattvas, the etheric or vital energies. And as we start to go about purifying the body, we then start this process of elevation and illumination. So depending upon the level of the level or stage we're at in the work, we can work at different areas of the body. And the mantras then, as we do that, can harmoniously begin to cleanse, purify, and elevate the movement and flow of the prana through the nadis. And to understand that the blockages in the nadis themselves aren't physical things. We're talking about subtle, vital and psychological processes. So again, an analogy that's given is that of a riverbed. So the flow of the water is the flow of the prana and the consciousness. And so that can be impure in itself. And over time, the riverbed begins to accumulate, gets deposits on the bottom of the riverbed. And as the water flows over those deposits, it sends ripples up to the surface, which we experience as thoughts, emotions, and feelings.
Interesting.
And so the process is to cleanse and purify the riverbed, which is the nadis. And those deposits that form in the nadis are the various what's called samskaras, or the egoical structures, the ego itself, which is a karmic imprint. It's a predisposition to perceive in a conditioned and characteristic way. So with the chakras themselves, as you can see, this is in the background here, each chakra has a certain number of petals. And those petals are the number of nadis, channels, that connect at that level. So in the Muladhara chakra, we have four petals, so 4 nadis, 4 principal nadis. And on each of the petals is a particular sound, which is the vibratory element of that particular petal. And with it, a particular psychological characteristic. So as we pronounce the mantra related to that particular chakra, it begins to cleanse and purify at a relative level the nadi. But it will only become profoundly cleansed when we remove the accumulation that's obstructing and blocking the flow of prana through that nadi, which obstructs the absolute function of the chakra. So as we awaken the fire and begin to elevate the fire through the spine, we reach each of the vertebrae of the body, and then the principal chakra related to that area. And so each vertebrae and each chakra has its corresponding psychological value, its wisdom, its principles, its virtues that have to be understood, which is the purification of the nadis at that particular level. So the mantras can facilitate that process. So as we do a mantra, we start to stimulate the movement of the prana, and we can feel that as, let's say this is the nadi and the prana is flowing through there, as that hits a blockage, then we will experience a psychological response. We could see that as a memory, or as a thought, or an image, or an emotion. And so we can use the mantras as a means of cleansing and purifying ourselves if, as we do the mantra, what's produced in us psychologically is transformed with conscious comprehension. So the mantras in and of themselves can help with the flow of the prana and increase the vibration, but without the participation of the consciousness and conscious comprehension, the liberation of that conditioned element, it's a relative and temporal transformation.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that in-depth explanation. Yeah, and, you know, I totally agree with we see the relationship. I always tell my students, as Master Samael, says, just make sure that when you're doing a mantra, you're doing it consciously, right? And with intention, the intention also counts. And again, that, that psychological state of being is so important in our practices.
And as is depicted, in every tradition has its foundation on ethics,
right?
On sanctity, on chastity, and that's the platform we have to build our spiritual practice on. We can move too quickly into pranayama and transmutation and mantras and meditation, but without that basis, we can do the practice, but then we're just clogging up the riverbed again with a poor and low level of being.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that reminds me of that thought by Sivananda, right? He says some students take on the practice of concentration and pranayama without going into a preliminary stage of ethics, of mental purity, right? And that's why at the core of all of the different spiritual, esoteric, and religious traditions, the first thing that you're told that, hey, there's a set of guidelines here that you should embody. There's a set of ethical principles that you should embody. because that's what's going to prepare you to actually go into the next step, which is spiritual visions, as Jesus said and Carlos Guevara mentioned that in our talk, our first conversation on emotional alchemy. He said something that Jesus said, one of the Beatitudes, blessed are the pure in heart because they will see God, right? And so if your heart is not pure, you're not going to have any visions, right? And the visions that you see are probably visions that the ego is giving you, which can bring, disastrous consequences for your spiritual life. So, cool. Let's see. So we have a few questions here. We're not sure if we're going to be able to get to all of your questions, unfortunately, but somehow I will get back to you. Maybe I'll do a little video to answer your questions and add that to like part 2. I know Instagram is going to kick us out in just a few minutes. So if there is, let me just take a snapshot here of the pictures real quick, just to make sure that I have them, and that way I can get back to them. Scott, do you have a few minutes still available? We can maybe
plenty of time.
Yeah. Great, awesome. So let me log off from Instagram right now, and I'll log back in because they'll kick me out, and if they do, then I won't have access to the recording. Okay. So let me do that for all of those of you on Instagram. I'm gonna log off right now and come back in just literally a minute, okay? And then I'll. And
do you want me to stay on the BeLive on the Facebook?
Just stay here and then just come back on Instagram, okay? And we'll get to some of the questions that are on Facebook in just a second, all right? Okay. All right. Share to story. All right. So you probably got kicked out of the live feed on Instagram now, and I'm going back on. Here we go. So whenever you see me, Scott, just go back in there, and then I'll invite you, and we'll give everyone just a minute to. All right, here we go. Get back in. All right, we'll give everyone a moment to just begin to rejoin us. In the meantime, we do have a question here on Facebook. We have a couple of chats open up, so please bear with me. There's a question here which it's related to the different sects of Gnostic beliefs. I heard another. All right, I will actually. Grace, I will get back to you to that question since it's not directly related to the topic. And there's a question here that comes from my friend Stuart. He says, how about cleansing, fasting, and raw diet? Yeah, so that's one question for you.
Okay, yeah, it can be really helpful, but again, has a relative element. So depending upon the degree of abuse we've subjected the physical body to, we could have accumulated a lot of adverse elements in the physical and vital body, which similarly will affect our psychology. So it can be helpful to do the physical elements of cleansing and purifying. So as you said, cleansing, fasting, and dietary changes. But understanding that ultimately it has a relative importance. That if we do all of those changes, that we're putting good food in our body, we're periodically fasting and enabling the digestive system and the blood to begin to cleanse and purify. It's really wonderful. We're eating good quality, drinking good quality water, and whatever degree of if we can have organic food, it's great. Right. But if whilst we're eating that food, we're overcome by psychological states, we're simultaneously nourishing and poisoning ourselves. So the impact of, and I'm sure we might have all experienced this, if we're having a meal and we're in a bad mood or we've had an argument with someone and we're eating a food, we just get indigestion. Right. And that's a sort of a big or a gross example. But if we're just distracted, So we're eating our meal and we're on our phone, or we're watching something on YouTube, or we're preoccupied and daydreaming about something. Then similarly, our conscious attention isn't in the digestive system. So we're adversely affecting it. So yes, it can be really helpful. As Master Samael says, we don't want to make a religion out of the kitchen. So understand that it's useful. Gnosis in that sense isn't really an embodied tradition, as opposed to traditional sort of yoga or Taoist traditions where really working the physical body is important. Master Samael gives the lamasery exercises and the runes, but mostly his description in terms of looking after the body is to keep the elasticity of the spinal column, and that's it.
Right.
Make sure your spine is loose and mobile, and there's no lesions on the spine, and then everything will flow, and the Divine Mother will fix everything. If we have chastity and love inside of us, the Divine Mother will be able to move through the spine. So yeah, it's a good question. It can be really helpful, but again, I think it has a relative importance.
Right. Thank you, Scott. I have another question here. Do you think it's possible by placing one's attention on different parts of the body to change the blood flow to that part? For instance, if I hold my attention on the crown and my neocortex, can I create higher cognitive functions?
Hard to say definitively or absolutely, but wherever we direct our attention, our consciousness goes. So as an example, so if we just close our eyes for a second, and so we put our awareness in our right foot. So we feel all of our attention goes to the right foot, and we can feel, and that's where our consciousness is, that's where we're perceiving. Now move your attention to your left hand, and we feel the movement of the consciousness. The light of the consciousness shines and enables us to perceive and to know what's going on in the left hand. So wherever our consciousness is, that's where we're experiencing, and that can influence the flow of energy and blood to that area. So then if we move our attention, our awareness to the top of the head, we see that that's where our perception is, that's where we're perceiving. And so in doing that, if we combine that, the movement of our consciousness with self-remembering, the awakened consciousness, with mantra, with an elevated state of consciousness, with prayer, then all of that in synthesis can begin to influence that in a positive way. So yeah, we certainly can. But we have to then recognize which area of the body we're moving the attention and the awareness to, how we're supporting that with mantra, with a level and state of consciousness, as a means of purification. So this is why the chakras, as we can see in the background, relate to levels of consciousness. That as we elevate our consciousness, as the fire awakens and ascends through the spine of each of the bodies, we have to see and perceive and overcome, to transform everything that limits and binds us at that particular level. So if we're stuck in the Muladhara chakra, and predominantly our psychology is governed by greed and insecurity and lust and laziness, the turbid, heavy, earth-like states, material existence, we can do practices where we focus on the crown chakra, and it will have some benefit, but we've got to start where we're at, which is at the bottom, which is where we're all at. We can do mantras for all of the chakras. It's absolutely beautiful. That's why it's so wonderful to do the mantras, each of the vowels or other mantras that we know that affect the chakras. And as the question states, we can direct our consciousness anywhere. And wherever our consciousness goes, that's where our attention and awareness is, and that will facilitate healing.
Yes, thank you, Scott. And I do have one question here that I think it's very important, and I would like to just give a very simple, straight answer to this one, because I believe that it's the most powerful way as the question is, what is the best way to decalcify the pineal gland? And I would have to say, from my own personal experience and trying many things, I would have to say sexual transmutation. And this is, you can read more about this in any of Master Samael's books. We do recommend, and this is why you'll notice that in every spiritual tradition, there's this, an important emphasis on Tantra, on the work with the sexual energy, and the sacrament of marriage in the Christian Catholic tradition is so important, right? Because there is an important element to sexual transmutation. And as I mentioned in some part in the lecture, right, Master Samael says that there is that relationship between the pineal gland and our sexual potency, and vice versa. So that would be my short answer to that. Obviously, there are other things that we could be doing, like filtering our water and properly from fluoride and these kinds of things. But as Scott was saying, right, if you take care, that's all relative, right? If you only take care of the physical aspect without acknowledging the spiritual and psychological aspect, you're not really holistically addressing the issue, right? And so I don't know if you want to add something to that, Scott, or.
Yeah, I think the whole aspect of fluoride in the pineal gland is important, and because my background was health to begin with, I was always on the bandwagon of do everything you can that will physically help, and then we read and we study all of the information that's on the internet these days, and then we think, well, we're not going to be able to open or decalcify or awaken and put into proper function our pineal gland if we're still drinking tap water, and if we're still using fluoridated toothpaste, and we're showering in tap water and so on. And I've been fortunate, I think, as a lot of people in Gnosis, but to meet awakened people, people that have completely liberated their consciousness, and they drink tap water.
Yeah.
And they brush their teeth with fluoridated toothpaste, and they have normal showers, and they eat conventional domestically produced food.
Right.
So one thing is the concept, and the other is the reality. As I say, Gnosis isn't a really embodied tradition in that way. So the health of the physical body solely at a physical level, it isn't that important. Because again, as we proceed through the path, to really understand the influence of the spiritual path is to see that the health otherwise of our physical body isn't in our hands. It's in the hands of the Divine Mother. And, as you said at the start of this question, Christian, the chastity is the most profound way. Chastity and transmutation is the most profound way to repair our pineal gland. So we can do both.
Right.
I think is the best thing. If we can have no fluoride in our toothpaste and be mindful of what we take into the physical body. But again, if we're doing that and then we're flooding our nervous system and our endocrine system with hormones and electrical impulses that will then recalcify the pineal gland, because we're completely disconnected from the Holy Spirit and from the Divine Mother, it's counterproductive.
Yeah, good point. And I just want to clarify a concept here for all of those that are not too familiar with the Gnostic teachings. And when we say chastity, we don't mean sexual abstention, right? We refer to sexual chastity as the proper use of the sexual energy, as the word chastity means purity. So using our sexual energy in a pure way that's aligned not only with our biological and instinctual drives, but with our spiritual and psychological needs, mainly our spiritual needs. So that, and there are ways to do that. And again, if you read Master Samael's books, you will be able to understand that. And we've also had, and there are other classes related to sexual transmutation that we give, and for that you can join our program. And again, it's too much of an extensive topic to cover here, but yeah, we talk about all of that. So okay, I think these are some of the questions that I can see here on at least one of the chats. Let me try to get to the other chats. How do I know which chakra is active? It's a good question.
All of the chakras are always active. It depends at what level of purity they're functioning. And so, again, this connects to a much deeper aspect of the activity or not of the Kundalini. So if the Kundalini is dormant, then it's dormant within the Muladhara chakra. And then the body is functioning more or less autonomously, and it's congested or influenced by the accumulations, the samskaras, the egos that obstruct and block the free flow of the nadis. And so if we have lots of greed and laziness and covetousness, then the 4 nadis that comprise the Muladhara chakra will be obstructed. And so that chakra won't be able to receive, assimilate, digest the tattva of Prithvi related to the earth, the element of the earth. And so it's always active, it's just whether or not it's functioning well. And so when the Kundalini is dormant, all of the chakras are pointing downwards. And then as the Kundalini starts to awaken, they're like sunflowers. They trace the sun, they follow the sun. And so as the fire rises, the petals, the chakras move up facing the sun, and then they open, and then they become purified. And it's not that the chakras spin, it's just that the activity of each of the nadis is optimized. And so it creates an electromagnetic vortex, which optimizes the reception of the Prithvi, so the element of earth, and then Apas, the element of water, and then Tehas, the element of fire, and so on through the chakras. So yeah, they're always active. It's just they're either optimized or not, and congested or not, and directed to the Kundalini, either dormant or awake.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's an important point, that the chakras are active at all times, and it's our our state of being what defines or what influences how they are spinning, whether let's say in the proper way or the negative way.
Yeah. If they stop functioning, we drop dead.
Yeah, right. Good point. Yeah. Okay, and let me 1 second here to just try to get to those questions that I couldn't get in the beginning.
I can't hear.
When dreaming, does it help to sleep elsewhere, like next to a bench, to a beach of high up penthouse and so forth? So that was one of the questions. Do you both? Thank you both for your talk. Great. Yeah. So let me just go back to Instagram. I think we lost Scott when I went back to look at that question. There we go. Okay, we're back. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I took a picture of the questions that we had before, and when I left, it kind of got off, but it brought us back in. So, so one of the questions, if you couldn't hear, one of the questions was related to like where we physically sleep at night, and how that helps us to activate certain chakras, or it's related to more lucid dreams or that sort of thing. And I think it touches again on what we've been talking about in relation to being more mindful of our body, but most importantly of our psychological state. And obviously, there is Master Samael talks in the Dream Yoga chapter that he talks about in his books. He does say that obviously the sleeping in certain ways helps us, and one of the best ways to help is that you want your head to be pointing towards the north as much as you can, the next best position is towards the east. The next best position is towards the west. So that's where you align yourself with the flow of energy on the earth, right? As the earth, the magnetism, the energy flows from the south pole to the north pole. And you can sort of use that current to leave the body or to align yourself with that energy and so forth. And then from east to west. So, yeah. All right. So I think this has been a wonderful morning, afternoon, since you're in Scotland with you, Scott.
Yeah.
We really appreciate, again, you being here. Thank you. And I mean, we've had a lot of people connect, and thank you all for connecting and for your messages. I see that a lot of you are enjoying these talks. So I think, Scott, you're gonna have to come back, man.
Oh, absolutely, that'd be great. Yeah.
Great. All right. So so we'll schedule something again to join for you to join us, and all of you that are here. We are just starting also a mindfulness course that starts this Wednesday morning. Okay, which is goes right in line with with everything that we're talking about. We're going to begin to talk about how to activate the consciousness, how to practice mindfulness, what is mindfulness, the spiritual, psychological, and physical benefits of mindfulness. And so you can go to our website, nycgnosis.com, to register for that course. It's not going to be a live, it's going to be a private Zoom call that we usually do. We're meeting Wednesdays and Sunday mornings. And if you are in Europe, if you are in Scott's timeline, please get in touch with him. He's also teaching Gnosis, and he has some online classes there in that time zone. So yeah, if you're in that side of the world, please get in touch with Scott. You can send me a message, as I understand that Scott doesn't have a Facebook yet. But you can email me, you can send me a message, and I can put you in touch with him. So, all right. Thank you again for being here with us. I hope you enjoyed this talk as much as I did.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Scott. All right, and we'll see you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Christian, and thanks everyone for tuning in and for your questions. It was great.
Right. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. We'll see you again. We'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 with a live guided meditation. And all right. Hope you see you there. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay. Take care.
Ciao.
Ciao.